The wind carried the scent of dust and desperation the morning Mara Ellis realized her world had quietly fallen apart. She had always imagined tragedy as something thunderous, loud, shattering, impossible to ignore. But the loss that took her baby came gently. It came in the soft click of a door closing, the muted jingle of a man's spurs, the quiet lifting of the small, warm bundle from her arms. There was no battle, no screams, no storm. The world simply shifted, and her son Jonah was gone. Mara stood at the edge of her small, weather-worn cabin in Willow Creek, staring out at the figures on horseback retreating down the dusty road. Her arms were still curved, as though cradling a child who was no longer there. She felt as hollow as the empty home behind her. Jonah had been taken as payment for a debt she never knew her husband owed, a debt that died with him and rose again in the hands of a man who called the whole thing legal. Legal. Such an ugly word when used to justify cruelty. Mara sank to her knees, palms scraping against the dry earth. No tears came at first, shock held them hostage. But when she whispered her baby's name, Jonah, something inside her shattered, and the grief poured out. It wasn't the kind of weeping that softened pain. It was the kind that pulled apart the pieces of a heart already fragile. Time blurred. Neighbors passed her on the road, whispering, watching, pitying. But none interfered. None dared challenge the wealthy, merciless Markham who now claimed to own her child. She didn't know it then, but someone else was already making his way toward Willow Creek, a man who had spent years hiding from his own sorrow. A man who knew what it meant to lose a child. And soon, at exactly noon, he would ride into town and draw a line no one had ever dared draw before. Silas Ward descended from the mountains on a weathered mare, the kind of man who looked carved out of stone and silence. He had lived alone for 3 years, keeping to a small cabin tucked into the forest, haunted by the avalanche that had stolen his wife and newborn daughter. The mountains offered him solitude, but not peace. Peace had left the moment the snow swallowed the life he loved. He told himself he rode into town for supplies, nails, flour, lamp oil. Simple things. But he felt a tug, a strange, persistent instinct urging him downhill before the week ended. He didn't question it. Some instincts rose from places deeper than reason. Just as the town clock struck noon, Silas rode into Willow Creek. People turned to look, not because they knew him, but because it was impossible not to. He was tall, broad, quiet, carrying an aura of strength worn thin by grief. He guided his mare to the general store, tying her to the post, when he noticed a woman stumbling out of the sheriff's office. A woman with tears streaked across her dust-covered face. A woman whose pain mirrored a pain he knew well. Mara nearly collapsed as she stepped down from the wooden porch. Silas moved toward her instinctively, catching her elbow. "You all right?" he asked, voice low and rough from disuse. She tried to pull away, embarrassed, broken. "I'm fine." She wasn't. Anyone could see that. Silas didn't pry. He wasn't a man who asked questions. But then she whispered, almost to herself, "They took my baby." Before he could ask anything, loud laughter spilled out from the swinging saloon doors. Markham strutted out, flanked by 2 armed men, arrogance hanging on him like a tailored coat. When Markham spotted Mara, he smirked. "Still crying." "The law doesn't care about tears," he said. "Debt is debt." "Give me my baby," Mara demanded, though her voice trembled. Markham shrugged lazily. "He's already at my ranch. And he stays there." Silas watched him with a steady, icy gaze. He had seen men like this, men who believed fear was ownership, that the poor existed to be stepped on. Markham finally noticed Silas. "Something funny, mountain man?" Silas didn't blink. "Not a thing. This ain't your problem." Silas's jaw tightened. "Maybe I'll decide that for myself." Mara's eyes widened in alarm. "Don't, please don't get hurt because of me." But Silas didn't step away. Instead, he stepped forward. Markham's smirk faltered. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Silas studied him with quiet intensity. "Making sure a mother gets her child back." Markham let out a mocking laugh. "What's it to you? You don't even know her." Silas exhaled slowly, as though bracing himself. 3 years ago, I lost my wife and newborn daughter. Couldn't save them. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I could go back, hold them tighter, do something different. A hush fell over the street. Silas's voice softened, rough with memory. "So no. I won't stand here and watch another parent lose a child." Markham rolled his eyes. "You think you're going to march up to my ranch and simply take the boy?" Silas's stare hardened. "If that's what it takes." The hired guns reached for their holsters. Silas stepped directly in front of Mara. A shield. A deliberate target. A man ready to die if it meant protecting someone else. The moment stretched, brittle as glass. Silas spoke quietly, eyes never leaving Markham's gunmen. "Pull those guns, and I'll drop both of them before I hit the ground." The gunmen hesitated. They saw it in his eyes, he meant every word. Markham cursed under his breath and backed down. But before he left, he glared at Silas. "This isn't over." Silas didn't flinch. "It is when you return her child." Markham stormed away. Mara stared at Silas, breath trembling. "Why did you stand up for me?" Silas looked at her gently. "Because someone needed to." She covered her mouth with her hand, overwhelmed. "He owns half this town." Silas glanced toward the mountains. "Good thing I don't live in town." That afternoon, the two set out toward Markham's ranch. Mara rode behind Silas on his mare, clutching his coat with one hand and wiping tears with the other. Fear quivered through her, but Silas rode with the steady confidence of a man who had already faced the worst life could offer. The ranch sat like a fortress against the hills, lanterns glowing in its windows. Markham's armed men patrolled the perimeter. Silas observed everything, calculating. "We talk first," he murmured. "Only fight if we must." When they approached, a guard barred their way. "We're here for the boy," Silas said calmly. "Ain't happening." Silas tilted his head. "You sure?" "Because Markham doesn't pay you enough to die tonight." The guard stiffened. Another whispered, "He's the one who stood up to Markham earlier." Recognition rippled through the group. Moments later, Markham burst from the house, shouting. Silas didn't shout back. He simply stood firm, his voice steady and powerful in its quietness. "You've taken enough from people," he said. "Give her the baby. Let this end without blood." Markham scoffed. "Never." But then something unexpected happened. A ranch hand stepped forward. "You should give the lady her child," the man said. Others nodded in agreement, men who were tired of Markham's cruelty, tired of being instruments in his schemes. Markham froze. He had always ruled through fear, never confronted with united resistance. Silas stepped closer. "This is your last chance to do one thing right." Something in Markham's face cracked, some mix of frustration and shame. He gave a short nod to his men. "Bring the child." Mara gasped when Jonah was carried out. She ran to him, gathering him into her arms with a sob that could split the sky. Jonah whimpered once, then nestled into her chest. She kissed his head over and over, whispering his name like a prayer. Silas looked away, his throat tight. He had forgotten what hope looked like. Now he saw it in Mara's trembling smile. They rode home beneath a quiet dusk. Mara held Jonah tightly, her cheek resting on his soft hair. Silas kept watch as they traveled down the hillside, feeling something loosen in his chest, some old grief beginning to lift. At the edge of Willow Creek, Mara turned to him, eyes shining. "How can I ever repay you?" she whispered. "You don't owe me anything," Silas replied. "But you risked your life." He looked at the sleeping child, then at the stars above. A man who's lost a child doesn't see risk the same way. Mara swallowed. "Will you stay in town for a while?" Silas considered the mountains, the place he had retreated to, the place where his heart had remained frozen. Then he looked at Mara, Jonah, and the warm cabin waiting for them. "I think," he said slowly, "that I might." Life in Willow Creek changed after that night. People began standing up for one another. Markham's power faded. Mara's cabin became a place of safety and laughter again. Jonah grew stronger with each passing day. Silas helped repair her home, plant her garden, and guard her peace. One evening, as fireflies drifted through the air, Mara touched his arm. "You didn't just save my child," she whispered. "You saved me." Silas looked at her with quiet emotion. "Maybe you saved me too." And perhaps she did. Because sometimes the smallest acts of kindness reshape the course of a life. Sometimes strangers become protectors. Sometimes wounds heal in the warmth of shared hope. And sometimes a broken-hearted mountain man rides into town at noon and changes everything, not through violence, but through the simple, unyielding power of compassion.